Hello and welcome to On the Table. We are broadcasting on RTM Click and MyTV's Berita RTM channel 123. I'm your host, Otto Othman. Thank you for joining us today for what promises to be a captivating discussion, strategies for advancing the Malaysian creative industry in a world where innovation and artistry intertwine, and how can Malaysia position itself as a vibrant hub of creativity? What strategies are we looking at, and much more. Now, sharing his thoughts and insights into these matter and more, we're privileged to have a visionary joining us today, Dato' Kamil Othman, Chairman of National Film Development Corporation Malaysia, or Finas. Thank you so much, Dato', for coming to the studio.
You're most welcome.
Now, Dato', without further ado, let's delve into this. Begin with the recently concluded Film Festival Malaysia ke-33. What's your insights on that?
I think FFM, this is the 33rd. 33, I think we are seeing more diversity. I think that cultural diversity part is most prominent during the event, and also from the submissions that we received, which is about 100 odd, but 94 actually came into the final listing. Now, what was the first thing that we noticed was the diversity in themes, because normally you would expect some sort of stereotyping, you know, the same old stories. But this time, we've got a variety of stories, variety of themes, and all reflecting what Malaysia is really all about. So we are very happy with it.
And how many have joined so far in this festival?
In terms of the submissions, we did receive about 100 plus, I think 104, but the committee, the jury had to pare it down to size, because remember, the submissions were made by the producers. So the producers themselves would say things like would nominate their films for Best Film, Best Actor, or Best Actress, and so on. And then there's a committee that sort of pass down and shortlist and watch the films.
Now, Dato', how has FFM 33 influenced the local film industry, and also how it might help drive growth, in particular Malaysia's creative sector?
I believe that FFM this year, as well as the previous years in some ways, what they have done is that they are starting to open the door towards what is known as adaptation to the digital environment. Because most of the films made, the storytelling remains the same, but I think the filmmakers today are very conscious of the fact that the films that they create may not necessarily be something just for the cinemas. So they do take into account the fact that the world is getting borderless as well, and some films are made actually with that worldview in mind, meaning that they would take the risk of making something that someone outside Malaysia would also enjoy. So this is a big difference from the days when it was still very domestic-centric, when people make films and they're expecting the welcome is to be received only from the domestic side. But now I believe more and more younger filmmakers are now adapting to the fact that their stories could be well received by other than Malaysians.
What would you say, this is out of context, what would you say would be the growth point when it comes to the previous, or maybe years back, when the first humble beginnings of FFM to now? What changes have you seen, and what kind of characteristics in terms of filmography have you seen so far? I
think the basic thing that we have observed is the fact that people are paying more attention right now to storytelling. To storytelling, not in a very arbitrary way, but in a way whereby they could infuse in cultural elements, and also to reflect what Malaysia is really like. And this is a good sign, and I feel that with the kind of filmmakers nowadays from all sorts of backgrounds. Remember, we are dealing with filmmakers which are literally one group, which are the mainstream. These are the traditional storytellers, conventional. And then we've got the other one, which is more like trying to push the envelope a bit by trying to tell the kind of stories which maybe is more what we call reality-based. And it's not really about money. This is the other thing that we should also factor in. What has happened over the last few years is that the gradual move towards what is basically towards box office hits have become towards what is known as the cultural dissemination bit. It's not that they do not want box office hits as well, but the big difference is that they are able to travel the world. So mostly small budget. So that's why the risk is not as high as a mainstream film, which will cost millions and which are expecting to recoup their investment from a limited audience environment. Independent filmmakers, we make...
Now, to support, what do you call this, to support and grow Malaysia's film and creative industry, what key initiatives did Finas undertake this year?
Other than funding, which is essential, we undertook a lot of what we call training programs. Training used to be about just one side of the training environment for this industry, what we call the above-the-line training. We were training directors, we were training screenwriters and performers, editors and so on. But then there's another angle to it, the ones that people hardly touch, which is about project accounting, for instance. A film is still a project, so you would need an accountant there to, oversee things and audit. And then there's also things like copyright clearances, because remember, by having a focus on international, you have to make sure that the copyright clearances are all there. Otherwise, you put in a copyrighted material and you can't show it in Europe because of problems. So those are the things that we have done. That's number one. Number two is the way we channel the funds too. Channeling the funds here simply means that for the more established filmmakers, chances are you are able to get your own investment into your films. And for the first-timers, that's where we are focusing on the newer filmmakers. These are the ones that needs a bit more help financially, just to start the ball rolling. So the other is to also encourage film festivals at the university, at the, how shall we say it, at the club level. And where student films are, are being screened, and it's not about watching anymore, it's also about discussion. So Finas is playing a role in what we call counseling, for want of a better word, in the sense that we would meet filmmakers, especially young filmmakers, with small films, and try to explain to them how the next steps will be. And that would also include our marketing focus. Today, Finas would go to markets around the world, not just to sell completed products, but we would also go to sell pipeline products, work in progress, and especially scripts that require funding. So we would go and meet potential investors. We have nothing to do with the film industry, but because we are focusing on the commercial potential of the story. So we would be meeting that, and as well we would be going to festivals, trying to find co-production opportunities. Because as you know, nowadays very few countries in the world make films on their own. It is always a co-production, which also opens the door for co-distribution, co-financing. And it would be nice, for instance, as far as we are concerned, if ASEAN agrees next year. It could be something like any ASEAN film is free to travel to each ASEAN country. So immediately we take out that challenge about making films only for a limited audience, Malaysia, which is about 33 million. And even then with that population, you know how it's segmented as well. Because Malaysia still has the issues of Malay films, which only attract the Malays, Chinese and the other ethnic groups, including Sabah and Sarawak. So in a way, what we're trying to do is to say this needs a bigger audience base. And I think this freedom of movement or freedom to share our cultural and film content can be quite good.
I'm quite interested to know further in terms of how, when you're doing these initiatives whereby you're going down to the grassroots levels, to the universities, or even to secondary schools, you're doing the pipeline. And do you notice, is there any difference in terms of their attention towards detail in films nowadays compared to back then? Is there any difference?
There are differences because today's kids, I don't know what, Gen Z or Gen Y or whatever, and I can't even remember what gen I'm from. But let me put it this way, because they grow up with social media, so I think their sense of what is the audience has changed. In the old days, or in the, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, a film is made and the audience is like, we assume these are the people who would just buy the tickets and go to the cinemas. But the kids, I mean the new kids on the block, they are saying their audience as more than just that. That's one. Number two, we notice that they see their filmmaking as a sort of a branding exercise, where they would maybe identify a few characters or what, or some name, heroes or villains, hoping to create like a universe, multiverse kind of thing.
I see.
That is a good sign because that means they already have the world as an audience. So that's the biggest change. And there's also this thing about the way that they approach filmmaking is from the point of what we call, and this is just a personal view, it's called instantaneous gratification kind of attitude.
I see.
So that makes them suitable, not so much for what's going to be on the screen, but for the TikToks of the world, for the small screens, and which, believe it or not, it's the vogue now. It's a trend. The famous tagline they use, I think they call it the micro drama. The vertical drama, vertical because you watch it on your mobile gadget, and you would be watching it vertically.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, for Finas, those are the consumption points.
I see.
Still, our aim is that it's all about good storytelling, still about making film. So this is why there's been a lot of questions like, how would all this change what Finas has been focusing on?
Yes.
The real answer is, Finas is still concentrating on the fact that a film activity is still about ideation. Someone would have to have the idea, and then someone would have to do the production, creating the story. And number three, they've got to do a lot of post-production as well, to upgrade things, colors, sound, or whatever. And then delivery and marketing. It is still the same old story.
But in a micro level.
Yes, at a micro level. So in a way, to all those who said that Finas may be irrelevant and all that because of technology, I said, no. It is still about a filming activity. Even at TikTok, even if it lasts for 30 seconds, it still involves somebody having to have the idea first and then actually try to map out how he is going to show the thing. And finally, they got to think about the audience. So it's still the same old story.
We can delve into that in just a bit, but we're going for a short discussion later on in a while. So stay right back because we're talking to Dato' Kamil Othman, Finas chairman. So stick around. Welcome back. We're talking to Dato' Kamil Othman, the National Film Development Corporation Malaysia Finas chairman, here today. Thank you once again for coming to the studio. Now, we've already discussed the fact that the initiatives that Finas has established and some insights as well that you shared with regards to the micro level of filmmaking to the broader sense of filmmaking as well, which brings me to the second question over here that we have. Now, what roles does Finas play in ensuring that Malaysian films are able to actually compete in international levels?
We would like to say that whenever we get involved in a particular film or even in the funding, we would try to influence the producer to start thinking global. Make sure their stories is not something that only Malaysians would understand. This is very important because Malaysians have already shown that we have a rapport with foreign films, horror, for instance. You know, they are now making a lot of money in this country. Indonesian horror films, for instance, are out box officing their local stuff. And so drama and on television, K-drama and all that. So Malaysians have always been receptive to a lot of the foreign international content. So our role right now is to say the only way to combat that or to mitigate the effects of you having a limited distribution space is to try to make your story as universally acceptable as possible.
That's the question over there. So how do we even start?
Yes, we do that by actually asking them to try to employ script consultants, preferably overseas if their budget permits. Let's say that if you're trying to target Korea or China, I mean, you need somebody from there to tell you that what you have written is something saleable there. And this is where we are also introducing sales agents to come into the production as early as possible. Because the sales agents or distributors, they are the ones who have kept their sort of hands on the pulse. Of the marketing network. They know what sells. So there's no point making a horror film when the genre that's trending is comedy or vice versa. So all these inputs are what Finas is doing right now to try to encourage producers. You just don't make a film. And this is where I should also add on that we are also putting a lot of training emphasis now on producers. Because Finas has to create a new breed of producers in Malaysia. What do I mean by a producer? They are the project managers. So if you see a film as the sum of component parts, right? Human resources, camera, technical, as well as how performances are being carried out and all that. And you know that once you have done all that, you need marketing and you need distribution. That is where the project manager comes in. And in this industry, it's known as the producer or the executive producer. We only have line producers who go into the technical part, but you need someone at the top. This is what we are focusing on. We have to create a new breed of producers who are able to tap into even global funds. One of the things that Finas have always been stressing is that we do not finance films. We support in the funding of the film. It has to be the resourcefulness of the producer to now find funding elsewhere. This is where our other challenge is. If I think you may have noticed, most of our films are small budgets. But that's because I think the producers are sticking to whatever they are able to get from Finas. Now, what we are looking at is you could make a 10 million ringgit film, 20 million ringgit film, but the acceptance is that Finas cannot finance all of that. So there is a need to now look at external funding. So that external funding, believe it or not, is available actually throughout the world. And this is where producers must be very, very resourceful to find out what Busan is offering. Because every year at the Busan Festival, there's always a pitching event where those who need funding would pitch for it. In March next year, there'll be the Hong Kong Film Month. They too have a pitching session. And all the major festivals in Europe, Berlinale, Locarno, Rotterdam, and even in the US.
So basically, they have to be well informed of the things that's available to them.
Correct.
Overseas as well, not only locally.
No, not only locally. So what we normally do is that we try, well, I mentioned counseling and advisory earlier. So that's what we are trying to do, to say that your film, if you need, let's say, 1 million, at best, Finas can only give you half of that.
Yeah.
Please search for the other half. Now, some people would do it this way: mortgage their house, borrow money from parents, and stuff like that, sell their stocks and shares or whatever. That happens.
Yeah.
Especially when you consider your film something that is so very close to you, and it means something, or in other words, you want to create your masterpiece.
Yeah.
So that's one group, and I think that group is getting more and more. They begin to understand. They bring something, it's halfway done, we bring them to Hong Kong or in Cannes or Locarno, and let them face the real investors, the one who could put in 1 million euro, which is already 6 million, 5 million ringgit here, which means part of their financing needs have been met. There's another group who actually depends on Finas, whatever Finas gives. And this is the one that we are trying to address. I mean, this is so much a criticism, but it's just to say that Finas can't finance you entirely.
Entirely, yeah.
Someone will have to put in money. I mean, it's just like opening a business. I mean, you can't expect the government to be there all the time. I mean, if you make your pies, your chicken pies, not of the kind of taste, I mean, they're not delicious, so it's not the government's fault.
Understood.
So it's the same sort of logic there.
Now, which comes to my next question over here with regards to complying with resources that we have and searching for resources out of our Malaysian region. Let's talk about what challenges do creative industries in the region commonly face, and how can they work together to solve the problem? And I'm talking in the ASEAN context over here.
Right. Funding is one of them.
It's one of it, yeah.
Right. So when we referred to earlier about maybe we could create a sort of a common market for ASEAN countries, it will open the door for discussions on co-funding, co-marketing, and most importantly, co-distribution. That means. And
how have we been engaging so far since you've been in office with regards to like script writing and then also agents as well in Malaysia and trying to distribute it? How far have we gone?
I think there has been a nice. There is success, a nice range of small successes here and there. Malaysian films are entering the Cambodian market space.
Nice.
Vietnam.
Which also goes to show that language should not be a barrier.
Yes, it shouldn't be. It's a story. At the end of the day, it's a story. I mean, half of the horror films, or even the films that we are so endearing to us, is more or less a story. So, yes, we have made inroads into Cambodia, Vietnam, and, Singapore, of course, is part of the normal sort of thing, normal route. But we can expand. Right now, a lot of Malaysian independent films are being shown all over Europe, but within the festival circuit.
I see.
And what we are hoping is that a distributor would see something and say, I'll pick it up, because that's the business part. I see something good in Locarno, and I want to distribute it for Europe. So that's why Finas's network includes all this. This network of buyers, distributors, and so on.
Now, Dato', before we end, it seems that we don't have much time left. What is your long-term goal in terms of Finas?
The long-term goal is that Finas is ready to accept any changes that's coming to the future. Because like I said, at the end of the day, Finas is really about addressing the business activity of someone having an idea, having to produce it, having to deliver and market it. So it is still the same thing. So whether we go into holographic content later, you are still talking about someone who has to write a script about it, or someone who has to photograph it. So things like AI and all that has never been a real issue as far as we are concerned, because those are just tools.
Yes.
So no different from whatever. They will help to improve the way that you produce your story. But at the end of the day, It's about how do we make Malaysian stories universal.
That's the key.
Yes, that's the key. So that if we know, like a story of Braveheart, and for most of us, we haven't even been to Scotland. So why? Because the film, the way the story is being told, although it's not 100% accurate, but never mind, artistic, how shall we say it?
Like what you said, it's a story.
Story. That is what we should be focusing on. And there are plenty of stories here that relates back to Britain when we were a colony. Plenty of stories which immediately has a market already even in Britain itself. And can you imagine Europe, right? I mean, we've got all that. So the trick now is, how shall we say it? The real filmmakers of Malaysia, ye shall arise. And Finas will be there to back you up.
There we go. All right, so thank you very much. That's all the time that we have for On the Table this evening, and we've been speaking to Dato' Kamil Othman, Chairman of National Film Development Corporation Malaysia, Finas. Once again, thank you so much for coming to the studio and then sharing your insights. I hope that all of you managed to get a few tips and tricks here and there about how to become a producer and also all the other facets that make up a film as well. So anyway, a repeat of this episode's broadcast can be viewed again at the same time tomorrow and subsequent days on both RTM Click and MyTV's Berita RTM channel. Now, till next Thursday, we'll discuss another topic of interest. I'm Otto Othman, signing off.